Hello, welcome to the Jack and Joe show. Joe Sansom alongside me. Not just one game we're previewing today, but two.
A 3-game week. It feels like we are back in the Sky Bet Championship, but in a good way, in terms of there just being constant football action. And ironically, one of our opponents is the Sky Bet Championship runaway, not leaders, but runaway second place in Ipswich. We've already got runaway leaders in Leicester. But before we get into it, Jack, a word from our sponsors. And as we've said for the last few weeks, for the entire of the 23-24 season, Fulhamish is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game, and we are very grateful for this. Green King Sports venues are showing every televised Fulham fixture over the course of the season. Obviously, we've had a few of those recently, and we have another one coming up, including on the weekend against Manchester United at home. So instead of turning to the internet for a dodgy stream, get your mates together, get down to your local Green King pub, and get closer to the action.
Yes, no need to stream this weekend if you're a Fulham fan, depending on just head down to a Green King pub and watch the game on TNT Sports. Download the Instagram page as well for the deals and the competitions, and it helps out Fulhamish, of course. On the box this weekend, we start at Craven Cottage, Fulham, Manchester United on TNT. And then the late kickoff is, wow, I didn't even realise they were playing this weekend. I should pay more attention to what's going on. What a game. Newcastle hosting Arsenal. And then the Super Sunday is Nottingham Forest hosting Aston Villa. And then Luton hosting Liverpool in the late game. That could be a tasty affair at the Kenny. Monday night, Spurs again at home to the worst team in West London, in Chelsea. That'll be fun. I wonder how many Chelsea fans will leave on the 50th minute after going 2-0 down. Probably a lot. Joe, let's start with Brighton.
Yeah.
It's a great point. Yeah, it's a brilliant point. I'm guessing you watched it on some sort of way.
I can confirm that I did consume the game. If I speak,
maybe you just listen to Gentleman Jim commentary.
Huge trouble. And I consumed it very happily indeed, Jack. I consumed it like it was a very illegal substance because it was just sensational. It was just one of those where we've had two now out of the four, where it's like the 4 horror games in a row. Spurs away, Brighton away, United at home, and then Villa away. And when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, before we'd had any of them, I think we both sort of thought we could easily come away with this with no points. Like, that's completely feasible, and it wouldn't be a massive shock. So I'm delighted with this. We saw a big reaction. I was going to say a big reaction from the Spurs game. We didn't. We saw a big reaction in the second half.
Yes.
Compared to the first half. And it was like a different team came out, and it was just a more front-footed approach in terms of pressing Brighton, showing them less respect, being a bit more physical, and ultimately throwing more bodies forward, being a bit braver. And in the end, I think the point ended up being completely deserved, Jack. When at half-time, I think you'll agree with me that I thought it might just peter out into another Fulham loss to 0.
Yeah, it did seem that way. It was a case of, and we've talked about it before, where is the goal? Where's the goal going to come from? Where are the goals going to come from? And, Raul Jimenez was up front. You know what? I clocked after the game. I think I clocked yesterday morning that Vinicius going off at half time against Spurs might have something to do with the fact he didn't start against Brighton, but I don't know, maybe not. But that was a bit of a shock to see Raul Jimenez start. And yeah, I mean, the first half we were terrible, like really poor. The ball in from Willian, the Bobby D over read at the back post is probably the best we created. Yeah. And I was fearing, we'd had an excellent day out thus far. And as soon as the football started, I thought, well, here we go. Come on, Fulham. But there was nothing. There was nothing in that first half that got me off my seat, despite me standing for the whole 90. But it was just very frustrating. But however, you're right. The second half was a completely different story. Pressing as a collective against Brighton basically caught them out. I thought Iwobi was brilliant. I thought Paulinho for the whole 90 was amazing. The elbow, it's so weird. It's so weird because I think Gross is turning away and then turns back in towards. I would like to hear your
Yeah,
take on this.
I think that's the thing, is that when I was watching it, clear how I was watching it, I had quite a good view, and I said to my dad, I was like, "Oh, I think he might be in trouble here." And it would not have surprised me if he got sent off for that. But ultimately, I think they've looked at it and thought there was no intent. He didn't deliberately lead into him. I think a yellow card would have been completely fair. It's a
Yeah.
poor challenge. Make no mistake about that. It's a foul. It should have been stopped. Should have been a yellow. We got lucky. But ultimately, he went like that, like leads with his arm, but he doesn't go like that. And I think that ultimately is the reason that he didn't get sent off.
It's also worth noting that, just since Paulina's been at the club, he's got a load of yellow cards for instances that don't look like yellow cards.
Yeah.
So when he actually has one where it looks like a red to a lot of Brighton fans, and a lot of maybe neutrals, he gets away with it. So it's maybe balancing the scales a little bit.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly clutching at straws way of looking at it. But to be fair, in the ground, I had no idea what even happened.
Yeah, of course.
I even saw the incident. But Joe, that second half was very encouraging, and in fact, we could have won it. And I have to say that the podcast name, Gritty in Pink, was just perfect. It's probably the best 3-word review I've ever heard from a game because of the way the game went. We were so gritty. We dug in. Yes, Brighton had a bit of pressure on us in the final 10 minutes, but I thought we defended pretty well. And I was really impressed with Calvin Bassey second half as well. I think Robinson had an okay game, not amazing. But Joe, I'd like to hear who are your standouts and who are you most impressed with, and the encouraging signs going forward into this Manchester United game, or Ipswich, of course, from the Brighton game.
I mean, I thought Robinson, it was a bit weird because in the first half I thought he was dreadful. Actually, I thought he was awful.
Yeah.
Worst player on the pitch. And it seemed like nothing was going right for him. And then second half, I thought he was just excellent. Not just that header off the line, which will obviously get the headlines, but his general defensive strength. He was
header off the line that gets the headlines. I like that.
Yeah. That was not deliberate, but I was quite happy as soon as it came out of my mouth accidentally. I thought the Bassey was really good, and I liked that he was a bit more no nonsense after what happened in the Spurs game. It would have been natural for there to be a few nerves. I thought that Palhinha had a fantastic game. It's not just because of the goal. He'd have been my man of the match if he curled that over the bar and it ended 1-0. He'd have still been the best Fulham player on the pitch considerably. Really impressed by Iwobi. I liked that he was trying to make things happen. I liked that he was very active. And I thought that Muniz had a great cameo when he came on, as did Wilson. And, those are two players that I've not given much credit to this season. So where it's due, you've got to give it. And I
Pereira as well.
Pereira as well. But I think the reason that Muniz and Wilson caught my eye is that they've not really been showing anything. Whereas with Pereira, there's been flashes, I would say. Muniz, is a player that we didn't expect to be involved this season. And with no disrespect to him, I think it still does show that the planning of the squad's been pretty poor, that he's involved. I still fully support him when he's on the pitch. And I think he's earned himself a start tomorrow night against Ipswich, which we'll come on to in a second. But I liked the way our midfield looked when we had Palhinha alongside Iwobi and Pereira. I thought that was great fun. And it's the same midfield that we saw against Sheffield United. And, it's something that we've sort of earmarked for those home games against teams where we're going to have more of the ball. But it does show that when we need to turn the screw and get back into a game, that midfield can cause some very big teams serious issues.
That's all well and good saying that, but also from minute one, we have to be on it. And I think I think that it's so frustrating because I think everyone in the ground, all the players, all our coaching staff knew what Brighton bring to games. And to be at that level in the first half and very sort of luckily only to be 1-0 down is obviously great. But the way we approached the game, our first half performance, it was like we weren't playing Brighton. You need to know your opponents. You need to know what they're all about. And I just don't think we were up to the level, whether that was down to the weather, probably not. But it's just one of those things. Sometimes you're playing a team and you go, oh, we know that they are quite aggressive in their press. And then sometimes you get there, the game starts and you go, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be this intense. And I was very annoyed with the goal we conceded. I thought it was so easy. Terrible defending. From the stands, it was like, what's just happened? They've just walked through us.
I I got to say that I was really disappointed on a slightly negative note, because I was a great result
Yeah.
with well, for the first half, our entire front three was an absolute shambles. All three of them rubbish. Willian, Jimenez, Bobby Reed.
Right.
I also thought that Harrison Reed was very, very, very poor, and I don't think that he should keep his place. I think that Harrison Reed, what you normally get from him is tenacity, is a work ethic that is very hard to top, and a reliable nature on the ball. And I don't think we saw any of his usual great game on the weekend. He gave the ball away and then was walking back. Really, something that grinds my gears. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think he'd have made it there. It was a bit like Sanchez against Brentford. You know, you just run back and show a bit of effort. But he just was not at the level that I expect from Harrison Reed. And when Lukic put in a performance on Monday night that I thought was fine, I don't think there's anything special, but it was fine.
Yeah.
It was much better than what Reed put in. But Jack, I think that there's a lot of players now that came off the bench and made a case for themselves. And we've got the weird situation of we have a game between the two league games.
Yeah, it's probably the
What do you
worst
think
time
about
for it as
who's
well.
going to play against Ipswich? Like, how strong do you reckon we'll go? Because a word on them, we're going to touch more on the Man United game today, but Ipswich are absolutely flying, and they are scoring goals for fun.
Mate, their results are incredible.
Yeah.
You know, if you want a bet, okay, apart from their 1-0 win over Bristol City, if you want a bet, and their 3-0 win over Hull earlier this month.
Don't take betting advice, guys.
Ipswich and yes, or Fulham and yes. It just as in like both teams to score. That's
Fulham and yes.
I mean, their last few results: 3-2, 1-0 win, 4-2, 3-0 win, 1-1 draw with Huddersfield. That was a tough game for them. And then obviously they beat Wolves 3-2 in the Carabao Cup. That's how they're here. 4-3 over Blackburn, 1-0 over Southampton, 1-0 over Sheffield Wednesday. They've got two sides to them: a gritty side that can sort of hold out a game and win by a goal to nil, and then the chaotic games where, again, 3-2 against Cardiff at home. They lost their only game they've lost this season, 4-3 to Leeds. Again, another 1-0 win against Queen's Park Rangers, and then a 2-0 win against Stoke, and then the 2-1 win at Sunderland. I mean, that on the opening day. I mean, they are a machine. You know, sometimes you do see this where teams come up from League One and the momentum just takes them into a different sort of stratosphere, and they just take on the Championship like it's nothing. And I pray to God. I mean, that's a bit extreme, but I really want them to go up. I really want them to go up and do the double, because it would be so fresh to have a team like Ipswich Town back in the Premier League. They've been away for far too long, and these are the players we need to look out for. You've got Amari Hutchinson, who's been incredibly impressive. Connor Chaplin, Nathan Broadhead, and George Hurst. That front four is, you know, not the most stardust of names. Like, you wouldn't be like, oh my God, that's incredibly threatening. But the way that Ipswich are playing, the way that Kieran McKenna's got them playing, is incredibly dangerous, and they score a lot of goals. They do concede quite a few. That's why I think we can have our joy, because I think we've got that added quality. But I'm really, looking forward to seeing them play, because it just seems like they're one of the most exciting teams right now in the country. And two, I just think it'll be a good game, a good spectacle. And obviously they've got Luongo and Morsey sort of sitting in holding midfield as well. And Brandon Williams, who you know didn't have a good time at Norwich, and now he's at Ipswich. And it's quite funny how things didn't go very well at Carrow Road, and there's a bit of back and forth between him and the Norwich fans, and that's always interesting to see. Joe, I'm going to ask you for your team. I suppose you asked me, but I'm going to ping it back to you now.
Fine.
A team that you pick, and how you think it's going to go.
So I think we have to go quite strong, and I think that if we do go strong with a better squad, and we should be winning this game. I've got huge respect for what they've done, but ultimately we've got a better team, and I think that if we perform, we should be winning this game, especially because, you know, we're sitting okay in mid-table at the moment. A cup run would be fantastic, and if we win this, we're in the quarterfinals. But this will not be easy whatsoever. In goal, I think it will be Rodak. I don't know. I think it's, to be honest, more likely to be Stephen Bender than it is to be Leno, if not. But I think it will probably be Rodak. Fine with that. Back four. Sounds like Tete could be in the squad, but maybe not quite ready. So I think it will be Castagnier right back, and Fode Ballo-Touré at left back. Centre back is a strange one, because, to be completely honest, we don't have much choice. So I think that it realistically has to be Ream and Bassi again, and just go with what's been played in the last 2 games.
Okay.
Sorry, go on. You can say
Well, I
something.
was just going to say because the unders are playing tonight,
Go
and I'm
on.
looking at the lineup, and there's no Defuggerals.
Interesting.
Uh,
Interesting.
is
I
it?
would not be against him playing at all. I bet he'll be in the squad.
Yeah.
Very interesting one, by the way, Jack. Just this is so random. It's just I've just read it, and I just want to tell you because you're my friend. Is that John Eustace is apparently going to be the new Bristol City manager, which I think is a great appointment.
Okay. That's good.
I don't know why I'm telling you that, but I
No, no,
have.
no. Is that Percy?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Richard Crawley.
Oh, he's very good. Yeah, yeah. He's
Very
a
good.
Fulham fan actually.
Anyway, sorry, I got to my midfield. Polina. I play Polina in this one
Oh yeah,
100%.
yeah, 100%.
And then I play Lukic. And I probably play Pereira just because of Wobie started on the weekend. So the midfield that started against Spurs. I then think for the front 3, Muniz deserves a shot from the off.
I think we'll start him.
Yeah, start him.
Yeah.
I think that Wilson deserves a chance from the off as well on the right-hand side. On the left, it's a bit of a strange situation where Traore's not back yet. Don't think we can play Willian in this one. So
Bobby
Reed, or
Yeah.
Iwobi on the left. I'd be fine with either of those. But basically, Jack, I'd go as strong as we can while resting a couple of players. For example, Robinson. For example, Leno. For example, wouldn't necessarily throw Carlos Vinicius straight back in for this one.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Are there any youngsters that I haven't mentioned that you would like to see get a
Well,
start?
not necessarily start,
Oh,
but
I know you're going to say.
Josh King is not
Yes.
involved tonight, and he's only just started for the under-21s. He only just started playing in the last month or so. He's someone who's on Marco's radar. I've asked him about him because I'm very curious. Only because I used to go to school with him, and he's much younger than I am, and he only lives around the corner from both of us. And yeah, I'm obviously playing for the Fulham Academy. When I found out he was for the academy, I thought, well, keep an eye on his progress. And
Yeah.
suddenly he's rose all the way up to the under-21s, and I'm thinking, well, he's not involved tonight against Fenerbahce. Is it Fenerbahce? Yeah, in the I don't know what it is, Premier League Championship or something. The under-21s, well, I'm sure it's going to finish like 7-6 to Fulham because there seems to be a load of goals in all the unders games. But yeah, I just kept an eye on him, and it does seem like he trained with the first team in the summer. He almost went to the summer series with Fulham, and maybe this is a time where he doesn't start against Ipswich Town, but he gets on the bench. In terms of your 11, I can't really sit here and go, no, I disagree. I think that's fairly reasonable. I think that our arms are behind our back here. We have to play Bassi and Ream. The advantage is here that it doesn't go to extra time. If it's a draw, it just goes straight to pens. And Manchester United also play in the week as well against Newcastle tomorrow night. So let's quickly get a score prediction for Ipswich, and then we'll move on to Manchester United before we finish.
I think there'll be goals. As you've
Yeah.
already alluded to, Jack, they're a high-scoring team. I'm going to back Fulham to win 2-1. I think it'll be a very, very tough game, but I'm backing Fulham to get through this one.
I'd be amazed if it's 0-0. I'd be amazed. I'm going to say chaotic game. I think it'll be like, I think we might lose.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I think we
no,
might
miss.
lose like
No.
3-1 or something.
Oh, God, we're getting battered. Right, let's move on to United.
I'd love us to win. We need to win. We don't need to, but
Yeah.
2 games away from a semi-final is a huge opportunity for us. But
that's why I want us to go strong, and we're a better team than Ipswich.
Yeah, if we play Paulinho, I've got a lot of confidence that we can get something from the game. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe a draw. We win on pens. We'll see.
Win on pens would be lovely.
Now, Man United at home is obviously a fixture that's not only on TNT Sports, you can watch it at Green King Sport Pub, but there's going to be a protest. And
Yes.
Joe, you want to fill everyone in on what's going on?
Yes. So on the 18th minute, there'll be a protest that's been organised by the Fulham Supporters Trust, but has also been sort of contributed to and supported by several other Fulham fan accounts and outlets. And essentially, I'm just saying to join in. And the reason I'm saying that is because I've seen a lot of backlash on Twitter to the protest. And if I'm being completely honest with you, do I think it is going to be the most effective protest possible? No, but I don't think that we could do that, because I think the most effective protest possible would be to stop the game or walk out. And ultimately, that's not going to happen. And we have to
No.
do something that will attract attention regarding the ticket prices, which is a huge issue. And the only way that this will not look good is if people don't join in. And so what I would say is, in the 18th minute, raise the yellow card that they're giving out outside the ground. It will be caught on the attention of the TV cameras for TNT Sport, and it will get discussed. And ultimately, that's what we need, because negative PR is the only way of making something happen here. So I would just encourage you to, for that 1 minute, get involved. Even if you think, oh, I'm not sure about this, it's just a piece of yellow, lift it up anyway. What's the worst that's going to happen? And you never know, it might make a difference. And if it doesn't, we'll need to try something else. But I do think it's definitely worth participating in for everyone.
It's going to be interesting what sort of goes on. My only issue with it is the fact that a yellow card is a caution. It's basically meaning, well, we'll give you a yellow. If you carry on doing it, we'll give you a red. Like, what comes next? A red card?
The VAR check first, and then the red.
Yeah.
I would just say get involved, because it's a first step, and I'm glad that the Fulham Supporters Trust have taken some action, and I hope that this is the start and not the end of a reaction throughout the fan base to these prices, which are unacceptable. If you're in the Hammersmith end, towards the bottom of the stand where it's not the season ticket section, I guarantee you'll be surrounded by United fans on Saturday. And the same for anyone in the Riverside stand and the Putney end. Johnny Haynes normally a little bit better, but wouldn't rule it out. And the reason for that is ultimately that Fulham fans have been priced out of this fixture, and the people that are willing to pay a premium are either tourists, which I've got nothing against. You'd rather Fulham fans in the ground, nothing against a tourist, but you'll have also United supporting fans from London that can probably get to one game a year and are willing to spend that bit more money. And it's something that we just don't want to see. You want the Fulham stands to be filled with Fulham fans, and that's not going to happen this Saturday. And in a more long-term sense, it's going to happen less and less if these prices continue. I think the club's problem is they think that we won't do anything. And I previously think that the Fulham Supporters Trust has been far too soft. And I'm glad they seem to have realised that and are at least doing something. And I would just encourage you to get involved if you can.
Angry Ginge in H4 will mean Angry Jack in H4, or angry anyone else.
Yeah.
But we saw, I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be there. I mean, he did it against Burnley, but he got clocked quite. Onto the football. It's obviously difficult, but going off, what happened at Brighton, our second 11. What would you go
our
with?
second 11. I mean, essentially, the team that were playing in that second half against Brighton just before we scored, so the subs that were made around the 60th minute, I think we have to go with something quite front-footed like that. Tete could be back in the squad as early as the Ipswich game. I would love to see Tete involved. I think Castanier's done a great job, but Tete defensively against Rashford, I would love to see that again. That being said, Castanier, happy with him playing as well. It sounds like Tosin and Diop won't be back in time. Sounds like Traore is probably the same. So for that reason, I think the rest of the back four is exactly the same as Brighton. Same with Leno in goal, of course. And then hopefully we get no injuries in this Ipswich game. And the midfield, I think it would be Polinia. I think it would be Lukic again, but I think it would be Iwobi as the attacking midfield and not Pereira is what I would like to see. Willian on the left, Carlos Vinicius up through the middle, unless Muniz scores something like a hat-trick tomorrow night. And then on the right-hand side, let's see what happens tomorrow. If gun to my head right now, I'd still probably start Bobby Reid, just because I think he gives you a little bit more defensive solidity than a Callum Wilson would, for example. Callum Wilson? We don't have Callum Wilson. We don't employ him. Harry Wilson. Yeah.
Callum Wilson.
I want a striker, Jack. What can I say?
Yes.
So basically, that team, something similar to what ended the Brighton game, with probably the exception of Carlos Vinicius starting up top.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I was speaking to a journalist today who's a Manchester United fan, and well, I mean, you look at their injury list, and they started Maguire and Evans against Manchester City, who,
Yeah,
by the way, tore them to shreds really, and it was a non-contest by the end. Manchester City sort of showing how superior they are over their rivals. But I'm looking at the list. I'm going off, flash scores, which isn't the most reliable, but Diallo's out injured, Malasia's out injured, Martinez is definitely still out injured. Sancho's nowhere to be seen at this moment in time, and Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka are out. So they basically got a lot of their back four out, which means they're going to have to play make. There was a rumor that Reguilon is like on his way back. Not a rumor.
he
Ten
came
Hag
on
literally said it.
briefly against City, so he
Oh, did
might be
he?
able to
Okay.
start again. But
I mean, so I mean, Dalot might play right back. They might start Evans, Maguire, or Varane. I don't really know if Varane's available. And then on the left, maybe Reguilon. I hear Casemiro's also injured, but
he didn't. He
I
didn't play
don't.
on
I
the
don't.
weekend. Yeah,
Did he not play?
no.
Oh, there we go. I mean, and then obviously you got McTominay, you got Ericsson, and then as a forward line, Rashford, Højlund, and Garnacho or Anthony. The problem is with Manchester United, and it was said on Sunday afternoon after the game, they don't have. You're right that they were right. They don't have an identity. So actually, it's very hard to predict what they're going to bring to
Yeah,
this game. It's one of those games where they could get further embarrassed and lose to us, and I think that's feasible. Also, they could just turn it on and just completely
yeah,
wipe the floor of us. And I think last season we saw like a bit of both from United. They were actually quite honest from the start at the Craven Cottage. They scored. We then came back in the game, got an equaliser, and then they got that
oh,
gut punch of a goal through Garnacho at the end, and that was really tough to take actually just before the World Cup. A score prediction for Manchester United, and how do you think that game is going to go, and how do you think we'll approach it?
I think if we can keep them to not having a fast start and keep it, their confidence must be rock bottom for their standards right now. They edged past a few teams like Sheffield United more recently, and FC Copenhagen obviously last week, but they're not winning convincingly and they're not scoring a lot of goals. I think we just need to keep them to minimal chances because they're having them and not scoring. And I'm a bit nervous that we're getting to a sort of Chelsea situation where eventually maybe the goals will come. And I don't want it to be against us. We need to hold them to a slow start and really impose ourselves on the game physically, especially if Casemiro's not back. I mean, we should be winning that midfield battle for sure. I think that we will get something from this game, and I think that it will be a 1-1 draw, and I think that will be a good result. I think that we should go out for this game trying to get the 3 points. I think there's a win to be had here, but I also appreciate that last year we probably outplayed United of the 6 halves we played against them. Maybe 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6, and we got 0 wins, 0 draws, 0 any route through in the cup. Nothing. They have players that can turn it on. We need to make sure they don't this weekend.
That would be their first draw this season.
Wow,
There
really?
this is like the thing about Man United. They've played 10 games this season. They've won 5 and lost 5. In all 5 of their wins, they've won by 1-goal margins in the Premier League. They won by a 1-goal margin against Copenhagen. They won by a 3-goal margin against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup, and then a few days later, lost in the league by a 1-0. They lost 4-3 to Bayern Munich. They've lost 3-1 to both Brighton and Arsenal, 2-0 to Spurs. Like every win they've had this season, they've been insanely unconvincing. The game against Wolves should have had a penalty. Wolves were the better team. The win against Forest, they came from 2-0 down and Forest had a red card. The win against Burnley, 1-0. Very unconvincing. Great goal from Bruno Fernandes, but very unconvincing. 2-1 against Brentford. 2 goals in added time to win the game. And then a late goal from Dalot against Sheffield United to get the win against bottom of the table Sheffield. Like, they've been so unconvincing.
Yeah.
I would be so annoyed if they just came over and rolled us over 2-3-0.
I
don't think that's going to happen.
Would be the most frustrating result of the season, other than the West London derbies, by a comfortable margin.
Agree.
Potentially even worse. I think I speak for most people when I say that I heavily dislike Man United.
Yes.
and we want to get one over on them, and the scars of last year have not healed. I'm not just talking about the FA Cup game. I'm talking about that Garnacho winner. I'm talking about the trip to Old Trafford in the league where we should have gone 2-0 up and got a famous result. Every single one of those games had a talking point that was infuriating. At least one.
2 questions before we go. First, a score prediction. I think Fulham are going to win by 2-0 on Saturday against Manchester United. What do you think?
I think it'll be 1-1. I think that'll be their first draw.
Oh, 1-1. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. No, I even though you've said that, I'm just going to stand by it because it wouldn't surprise me if it was like a United score reasonably early sort of thing, and they try and grind it out as they have done, and we manage to fight back. A bit like the home game last season, but hopefully minus the late sucker punch.
I have this vision of Andres Pereira off the bench free kick.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that. a lot.
We'll see against his former team. Final question. I don't want to sort of ask this, but I sort of have to. Is the missing link of this team the void of Alexander Mitrovic? It does feel like every time we play and we fail to create, the Mitrovic, if he dropped deep and received the ball and played it out to Pereira, he played it out to Willian, Wilson, whoever's on the wing, we create and he'll get in the middle and score. I'm not saying I miss him, bring him back, because that's just not a thing. But it is evident that we are lacking that killer instinct. And that might come through a striker we get in January or next summer. But it is so evident in this team. And that's why we're not scoring as many goals as this stage last season.
Without a doubt. Like it's I don't think it's even up for debate. The rest of the team's great. We just don't have the striker to score us 10, 15 goals comfortably. It says a lot that Polina strike moved him to our joint top scorer this season. 2 goals for a defensive midfielder is a good return, but our top scorer should not be on 2 goals. I think the frustrating thing is that someone made a great point on Twitter over the weekend that teams are showing us less respect this season. And part of the reason for that is not because, in my opinion, we've been found out or anything like that, but they're not scared of our front line. They can press us much better and not worry about Mitrovic winning those headers in behind and then flicking them onto a Willian in fantastic form or Solomon going through the middle, whoever, we don't have that fear factor when we go forward. We don't have that player that teams think, Fulham are a tricky side because of that Mitrovic up top. He troubled every top 6 side that he played against last season. He had a tough battle against great centre-backs. And as much as I have had his relationship with the club tarred by how it ended, I miss having him here for sure, because he was the player that would strike fear into the opposition, which is not something that anyone else that we currently have can do. We don't have that goal scorer. He's the missing void. That being said, we did not have him for the home game against United last season when we ran them very, very close. That was Carlos Vinicius. And one of the first times that I thought he really sort of cemented himself in the team as a good option. He had a good game that day and he nearly scored against De Gea. I remember him putting out a couple of good saves. And I really hope he's back to play again this weekend.
Yes, I think Vinicius, if he's back, should definitely play up front against Manchester United. I'd love to see Muniz put in a good performance tomorrow, maybe grab a goal. I mean, that would be so great to see. That flick he had at the end of...
it's great.
In the second half it was a great technique. I think that the way we approached that second half after we scored was really encouraging. I think all the Fulham fans came out of the ground at the Amex really pleased. It's a tough place to go. We got a point against all odds, really, and amended for a poor first half display. Joe, it's been a bit of a marathon today, but thanks so much for being here.
No worries. Thanks, Jack. Thanks everyone for watching. Enjoy the Ipswich and Man United games. Fingers crossed we can get 2 wins.
Joe, enjoy your holiday as well. We know you're going to be off for a couple of weeks. Jack Stradley will hopefully fill in, substitution for Fulhamish or the Jack and Joe show. Guys, thanks so much for watching. And oh God, where are we? Thanks so much for watching and come on Fulham.